And for more on the latest ceasefire and the ongoing conflict in Gaza, we're joined live in our studio by Mark Perry. He's a military analyst on the Middle East. Thank you for joining us again. We appreciate you coming in.
My pleasure.
So Hamas is now saying when it returns to the negotiating table tomorrow that this will be the last chance for a deal. Is this an empty threat or a reality?
I think based on experience over the last 30 days, what we've seen from previous talks in Cairo, Hamas is not bluffing. They never bluff. They can't afford to bluff. And they're clearly putting pressure on Israel to come to some kind of agreement. On the other side, Israel is saying the same thing. So what we have is a staring contest now. We're just going to have to see how it turns out. But I think your reporter is right. It's not looking good.
Okay, Stephanie Fried was just reporting that Hamas is very well equipped to go on and keep fighting. Where are all these weapons coming from?
They've come in over the last year from Libya, from stores that Hamas has in Egypt, even though Egypt hasn't been a friend. And they've been storing up lots of rockets, lots of mortars. They don't seem to be running out. I think it's been a surprise to Israel that they haven't. They're still capable of inflicting some damage on Israel, or at least bringing psychological and political pressure to bear. But they've been ready for this fight for some time, and we've seen that they're able to continue it.
Are you surprised that they haven't turned back just on the amount of bloodshed, 1,900 Palestinians killed?
I'm not surprised. A month ago, I thought that perhaps there would be a 2 or 3 week war at the most. I was wrong on this. What we've seen over the last 4 weeks is increasing support for Hamas among the Palestinian population in Gaza. This has taken Israel by surprise. I think it's taken everyone by surprise. But it means that they're strengthened politically, and that's why they're going into these talks very stubbornly saying they've got to work or the fighting will continue.
Hamas wants the borders lifted. Israel is afraid of what will happen if the borders are lifted. Is there any type of monitoring that could be done to appease both sides?
There has been talk of a port opening in Gaza, perhaps with goods coming through Larnaca and under international monitoring. But right now, Israel says that's off the table. That can't happen. So we're going to have to look for open borders with Egypt. It's going to be very difficult. General Sisi of Egypt doesn't want that. So we're stuck. And unless somebody comes up, the international community comes up with some kind of pressure on both parties to accept a compromise, we'll go back to war.
How much more pressure from the international community should be put on both parties, and should the United States put more pressure on Israel?
I've always thought the key to this is the U.S. putting pressure on Israel, but it hasn't happened. And now we're in a more difficult situation. Our perception is being diverted. Our glance is being diverted to Iraq and to Turkey, to other areas of the world, to the Ukraine, and people are taking their attention away from Gaza. It's bad news for Hamas, it's bad news for the Palestinians, and it does give Israel some room to maneuver, unfortunately.
Looking beyond this crisis right now, where will the Palestinians go once this does stop? Because Gaza is basically obliterated.
The international community has to start looking for permanent resolution of this conflict. You can't keep the Palestinians penned in Gaza. It doesn't work. You can't keep negotiations off the table with the West Bank Palestinians, with all the Palestinian community, because that doesn't work. There's going to have to be a move on the part of the international community to return to talks on an accelerated basis, or we're going to see this war all over again in 2 years.
Right, Mark Perry, thank you.